What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Rob St. Clair here for Volleyball Source. Welcome to a special preview episode before the 2022 Men's Volleyball World Championship of Team USA. Yes, it is time. In less than 24 hours, actually maybe 15 or 16 hours, we will be watching the USA men play in a World Championship match. So the tournament starts tomorrow being Friday, August 26th, and the USA men are kicking off pool play in Katowice, Poland tomorrow. So on this show, we're going to get into the USA roster, at least that roster which we know right now. Going to get into the pool, the schedule of matches, a little bit of what Team USA has been up to since finishing second place in the 2022 Volleyball Nations League, and just kind of give an outlook for this tournament and what some expectations are, and just, get into a whole overview of the USA men. So I want to thank everyone for watching, encourage everyone to get active in the YouTube live chat. I'm looking at it. I'll be able to see your questions and answer them if there are any good ones. So put them in there, and check out all the links in the description here of this video. The Volleyball Source Discord is a huge one. Definitely get in there. That's going to be a really central spot for a lot of our chat and discussion throughout the 2022 World Championship. And in case you missed it, Everett Delorme and I did a really detailed show on Tuesday night breaking down the entire tournament. So we did a huge show, almost 2 hours, breaking down the whole tournament on Tuesday. And then Everett did a show just here on the same YouTube channel yesterday talking about Team Canada. So if you're looking for any more broad tournament info or info about Canada, we've already got that for you here on the Volleyball Source YouTube channel. But now let's dive into Team USA. And without further ado, let's get into it with what we know about the USA roster for the World Championships. So here it is. This is only from about a week ago from the official USA Volleyball release. We do not yet know the final 14 players on the USA men's roster, which is a little bit ridiculous considering this tournament starts in about 12 hours. So John Speraw and the coaching staff clearly know the 14, but just hasn't been released to the media just yet, which is frustrating. But what we do know is that 16 players took the trip over to Europe to do some pre-tournament training with the USA. They were in Cuneo, Italy in the last week or so. They played 2 warm-up scrimmages against Italy and Japan. We'll get into how those two went. USA Volleyball was kind enough to post the score sheets for those, so we can dig into that a little bit. But here are the 16 guys that are in Europe right now, or were in Europe this past week with the USA men. And of these 16 guys, 2 will be cut, and the other 14 will be the roster for the 2022 World Championship. So at the setter position, no surprise, we've got Micah Christensen and Josh Tuaninga. So with the retirement of Kavika Shoji, at least from the national team level, the Tokyo Olympics last year were Kavika's last tournament. He will play club for a couple more years, but he's done with the national team. That second setter spot is now pretty clearly Josh Tuaninga's. And but obviously, as we all know, the starting setter will be one of the very best in the world, Micah Christensen. At the opposite position, 3 opposites made the trip to Europe, and I expect all 3 to be on the roster for the World Championship. That's Matt Anderson, who returns after taking the VNL off. We got Kyle Ensing, who is the starter for most of VNL, and then Kyle Russell, who came in, played a couple matches at opposite during VNL, but I think the reason why I think he makes this roster is as a service substitute. He was really good in that role during the VNL finals, that final 8 phase in Italy about a month ago. He came in off the bench, and his pressure rate was high and his error rate was low, considering how difficult it is to come in off the bench having not played a whole match and put in a jump serve. So I expect Kyle Russell to be on the roster as the kind of go-to service sub guy. Matt Anderson will start every match at opposite. That's not really a question. And Kyle Ensing will be the backup opposite. So we'll talk more about the wings in just a little bit. The outside hitters, this is where it gets a little interesting. The 2 starters will very obviously be TJ DeFalco and Aaron Russell. We saw that every VNL match that mattered, other than week 1. DeFalco got the week off. But after that, it was all Russell and DeFalco. And it was so good to see Aaron Russell back after serious hip surgery. He missed the Olympics last year, as many people know. Back to top form, one of the best players this year's VNL, like without exaggeration. He was outstanding. And DeFalco had a really good tournament until the finals. He was awfully shaky those first 2 sets, and then a kind of surprising position change late in that gold medal match versus France that we'll talk about later. But you better believe that Aaron Russell and TJ DeFalco will be the 2 starting outside hitters for every single match for the United States this tournament. The other three outsides who made the trip to Europe were Garrett Mwangatutia, who, if you've watched the 9x9 or have hung out in the Volleyball Source Discord much, you know my opinions on Garrett. I'm not particularly high on him, but I do have to give him all the credit in the world for his performance in the VNL finals. He came in, started 7 for 7 attacking, and ended up like 70% efficiency in the match, which was insane. So he played out of his mind that match, and it's been pretty clear over the last couple of years that he's just kind of found favor with John Speraw, coming in for one reason or another to stabilize some reception, not take that many swings, just try to go in, provide a little stability, maybe a little emotional boost, and just hopefully not lose the USA the match. And he certainly isn't a guy I would expect to be called upon to win a match, but in the case that one of Russell or DeFalco is struggling with reception, I could very well see Mwangatutia coming in and at least fulfilling his role. And then the other two outside hitters, Cody Kessel, who's kind of a long-time European club journeyman, a former Princeton All-American, who's kind of grinded his way through his professional career for so many years and finally got a break on the national team this summer. And then Jacob Pasteur, quite the opposite, very, very young. He's only going to be a junior at Ohio State. Really high upside, and played at the Pan Am Cup with the B team a couple weeks ago. He made the trip to Europe just to get some reps and continue his training, but I do not expect Pasteur to be on the final 14-man roster. So I think that's the easiest of the two cuts that John Speraw is going to have to make. I see him rolling with 4 outside hitters: Russell, DeFalco, Mwangatutia, and Kessel. And it's a fair question. Like, what exactly is Cody Kessel's utility in this tournament? Where would he be used? Because he's not an overwhelmingly strong receiver, and he's not an overwhelmingly strong server. So you're not going to use him as a defensive sub or as a serving sub. He is a pretty physical blocker, but you don't lose anything with DeFalco or Russell. So I think Kessel might just be there as a great spirit locker room team guy and might be used only in an emergency. A notable omission from the outside hitter position, obviously Taylor Sander. We know his story well by now. No, we don't expect to see Taylor Sander play any indoor volleyball for the foreseeable future, if ever again. He seems to have pretty permanently made the switch to beach. But the other omission from this roster is no Thomas Jeschke, and this is just such bad luck and another bad break in a line of very unlucky and untimely injuries in Thomas Jeschke's career. I don't know what the nature of his injury is, but I know he sustained it during the second week of Volleyball Nations League, didn't travel the third week or to the finals, and isn't on the roster this tournament for the World Championships. And that's really a shame because the U.S. loses a lot at that third outside hitter position without having Jeschke as an option. That first week at VNL, when it was just Russell and Jeschke the whole time, I thought Jeschke looked fantastic. He was a really good player at Milano this past European club season. You could argue he was the best player on that team and played like an L2 style but at L1 volume. He had a really good year, and I'm disappointed for him not getting to play at World Championships for the USA. Just another tough break for injury. So no Thomas Jeschke. I expect the outside hitters to be Russell and DeFalco as the clear starters, and Mwangatutia and Kessel coming off the bench. Moving on to the middle blocker position, we've obviously got David Smith. He'll be the captain of this team. He's had an incredible summer. You can't say enough about this guy's story. Plays all the time with 2 extremely high-powered hearing aids for the high level of profound hearing loss that he's sustained since birth, and is still an elite level volleyball player. Also at his age, he's maybe 34-ish. I don't exactly know the number, but he's had an incredible couple seasons, won 2 Champions Leagues in a row in club, and was one of the best middle blockers in VNL this summer. So I feel very confident in David Smith, which 5 years ago I might not have said the same thing. The second middle blocker spot will either be Jeff Jendrick or Taylor Averill. I'm not sure which of those guys is going to start. Throughout most of VNL, it was Jeff Jendrick, and I really love the turnaround that we've seen from Jendrick after not making the Olympic team in 2021 in Tokyo. He went to Berlin, played club, had a phenomenal season, came back with a lot of enthusiasm to the USA gym, and started pretty much every match at VNL, and he was awesome. Made some just really good mental upgrades in his blocking game. I'm impressed with the way that he reads the game in the blocking area these days. I also really like his float serve. One of the problems at the Olympics last year, for those of you who watched the USA, was serving. It was one of the worst serving performances ever. And I wanted last year for the USA to take a float server. I wanted one float service option. We didn't bring one. We saw how that went. I actually really like Jeff Jendrick's float serve. The other character who might start at the second middle is Taylor Averill. So he took the VNL off as well. He was dealing with some kind of a minor shoulder injury, I believe. He had a terrific club season in Poland for Olsztyn. He teamed up with TJ DeFalco this club season. Banged up a little bit, took VNL off. But another guy who did not make the Olympic roster last year, you'll remember that third middle blocker was Mitch Stahl. But Averill back in the USA gym and looks to perhaps be one of the starters. And then the fourth middle on this list who at least traveled to Europe was Tyler Mitchum, a young kid out of Lewis who's like a legit 7-footer. The guy's massive, really long arms, great attacker already, and has the most upside of any middle blocker in the American pipeline. And I'm still kind of 50-50 on if he's going to be on the final roster or the final 14-man roster. In my opinion, I mean, we know that the Olympics is the only tournament with a roster limit of 12. Every other FIVB run tournament, you get 14. And a lot of teams then will bring 4 middle blockers to these tournaments where you get 14. I don't necessarily see the utility of having a fourth middle blocker. I don't exactly know what Mitchum would come in and do, because I don't think you're going to play him as a full-time middle blocker at the World Championship when you've got Smith, Jendrick, and Averill, and you don't really need him for a blocking sub anywhere. I mean, you don't need to sub him in for Christensen. Certainly don't need to sub him in for Anderson or either of the outside hitters. So if it were me, I would probably leave Tyler Mitchum at home, but we'll see what Sparrow chooses to do. And then the libero position, Eric Shoji, obviously no surprise there. He's one of the best in the world. He'll start every match. And Mason Briggs, the young kid out of Long Beach State, has had a really good summer. He played a little bit at VNL, but the second libero spot for the most part at VNL belonged to Kyle D'Agostino. But my understanding is that he's banged up a little bit. We saw Briggs at the Pan Am Cup about 2 weeks ago and played really well that whole tournament with the B team in Canada. I do know, just based on some Instagram sleuthing, that Briggs is still with the team in Poland as of today as they get ready for their first match tomorrow. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if Briggs does, in fact, dress for every match as the second libero, just in case of an emergency situation. The only way I could see it is if Eric Shoji were to get injured. And I really, that hopefully won't happen, but other than like a emergency like Garrett Mwangatutia changing jerseys or something like that, I would expect Mason Briggs to make this roster, and I would expect him to be the second libero, even though he probably won't get any court time. But that is a really good sign for the future of the libero position for the U.S. With Dustin Watton stepping away from the national team, we needed a younger guy with a lot of potential upside to step in and maybe be in the mix for 10 years. Once Eric Shoji decides to hang him up, and it looks like Mason Briggs might be that character. So that's the roster, and those are some of the omissions. A couple other guys we got to talk about that aren't here. No Mitch Stahl. Mitch Stahl was the third middle blocker at the Olympics for the U.S. last year. Not on this roster. He is a little bit injured as well. I know that for sure. I just don't know the nature of it. And the other one is no Max Holt. And this is really interesting because the U.S. has really anchored its middle blocker position around Max Holt since the 2016 Olympics. Like in 2016, it was David Lee and Max Holt who started the whole time. It was only after that when David Smith really kind of rose to a starting role, and that's when Lee retired. So it's been Smith and Holt in every meaningful match, every meaningful tournament for the last 6 years or so. But Max Holt this summer is nowhere to be found in the USA national team gym. John Sparrow has said that he's not in the mix at all this summer, and his future on the national team is very much in question. We don't know if Holt is going to play for the national team again, but it definitely will not be this summer and not at this tournament. So that is the roster. 7 players of these 16 coming back from the team that played at the 2018 World Championships. That's Anderson, Averill, Christensen, Jendrick, Russell, Smith, and Shoji. So I guess we'll find out tomorrow morning as the U.S. takes on Mexico in the first match of pool play who the final 14 are. I expect the 2 cuts to be Jacob Pastor and Tyler Mitchum, but it's also possible that Sparrow chooses to leave Mason Briggs off the roster and dress 4 middle blockers. So we will see. Let's move on to a little bit of what the USA has been up to. These 2 scrimmage matches, like I mentioned, that they played the last week, just getting ready for the tournament. This is the match report for the match against Italy. This is actually really promising, to be honest with you guys. In Cuneo, in Italy, in a warm-up match that obviously doesn't count for rankings, but the teams really take these pretty seriously. The U.S. went up this was a sweep. It says 3-2 because it's a scrimmage and they kind of agreed to play 5 sets regardless. But the U.S. took the first 3 sets, 25-23, 22, and 22. And while Aaron Russell didn't dress for this match, a lot of the other guys got a lot of playing time, which was fantastic. So Micah Christensen started the first 4 sets. TJ DeFalco and Garrett Mongatutia started at outside hitters. We saw Matt Anderson for 4 sets. We saw all 3 middles of Jendrick, Averill, and Smith get legit time, and then Shoji played the whole time, and Russell came in as the service sub. So that's what I expect his role to be. And just some of the numbers, TJ DeFalco led the match in scoring. How many points is that? 16 for the U.S., pretty good. Anderson right behind him, 14 for 20 attacking for DeFalco, only 3 errors. That's above 50% efficiency. That's awesome. 3 stuff blocks for Jendrick and Garrett Mongatutia, weirdly enough. And pretty good passing numbers all the way around, 50% positive receptions, 34% perfect. Service ace to error ratio, 5 aces, 27 errors. That 27 is definitely too many, but who knows what the distribution was after the 3rd set when we had already won 3 sets in a row. So this one, a lot of the guys who we expect to start at World Championships got some good time, and just based on looking at the stat sheet, looks good to me so far. The second match that the USA played in warm-ups was against Japan. Now, this Japanese team didn't play a handful of their starters, so we didn't see Yuji Nishida. We didn't see Yuki Ishikawa, who are their 2 best wings by far, so that immediately makes it a very different Japanese team. But just looking at the U.S., Anderson started 2 sets. Russell started the first set. DeFalco started 3 sets. Ensing came in after that. Christensen started the first 2 sets. But then after set 2, for sure, Speraw got some of the guys, the secondary guys, a lot of time. Good numbers here as well. DeFalco was great again, 12 for 20, 50% efficiency, 16 points led in scoring, plus 3 aces, 4 errors. That's pretty nice. 2 aces from Taylor Averill as well, another float server who I really like, is kind of a change of pace service option for the U.S. So set scores was ended up being 2-2. Japan took the first, U.S. took the second 2. Japan took the 4th, and they called the match at that point, chose not to play a 5th set. So I don't know really what to take out of these preliminary matches. Not much. It was just good to see the guys get some touches, get some competitive action after a month or so off from VNL, and play against teams that, who knows, they might see down the road in the World Championships playoffs. I'm going to look at the chat for a little bit. Go to the chat and see what's going on over there. I see 2Jacks. 2Jacks is being a troll, asking about where Ben Patch is. He's asking that because he already knows the answer, but some of you may not know the answer, and that's that Ben Patch at the moment is retired from volleyball permanently, or not so permanently, but extensively. Will not play for the national team, will not play club even. I think he's still planning on living in Berlin, where last year he was the highest paid player in the whole Bundesliga, playing for the Berlin Recycling Volleys. He's not playing club volleyball this year. So he's stepping away from the game entirely. We'll see if he ever comes back and plays club again. But as long as John Speraw is the coach, I don't expect to ever see Ben Patch play in the USA jersey again. I think he was so devastated by being left off the Olympic roster last year. I don't expect his relationship with the USA program to be able to be mended. So no Ben Patch. And honestly, I don't think we lose that much. We have Matt Anderson in an emergency situation. We have Kyle Ensing, who was really steady, had a good VNL. In an emergency, if we have to move Anderson to the left side and have to start Ensing, we can do that, and we'll be just fine. And we're going to know what we're going to get out of that opposite position. Patch just too volatile, too up and down, and I kind of agree with the way that Speraw's handled Ben Patch the last couple of years. So let's look now, looking forward to the World Championships. This is the United States' pool. Pool C going down in Katowice, Poland. One of the most difficult in the tournament. I'd say it's tied with Pool B. Pool B has Brazil, Cuba, and Japan. But this pool is hard. Not only do you have to play against the number 1 ranked team in the world, who is Poland, in Poland, but Bulgaria, is way better than their 22nd world ranking. I think that Mexico is clearly the bottom team in this pool. I would be shocked if they won a match, but even Mexico is a little bit friskier than maybe they used to be. Everett was talking the last couple weeks because he was at the Pan Am Cup in Gatineau. He saw Mexico's A team there, and he saw some things that he kind of liked. Really fast offense, a good defensive team, but I still don't expect Mexico to win a match in this pool. But let's break this thing down a little bit. We'll get to the schedule in a moment as the USA takes on Mexico tomorrow. That'll be a nice way to start things off. But I was digging through some of our histories, our being the U.S., against these two teams, being Poland and Bulgaria in the past. The U.S., since the 2018 World Championships, where we lost to Poland in 5 in the semifinals. Poland went on to win. The U.S. went on to beat Serbia for bronze. Since then, the U.S. is 2-4 against Poland, including a 3-0 beatdown win in the semifinals of VNL this year. We lost to them in VNL regular round this year in 2022. Lost 3-0 in the 2021 VNL. We probably didn't play our starters. I don't really remember the match. Beat Poland in the 2019 World Cup. That tournament didn't matter. Lost in 5 to Poland in the 2019 VNL, and then that 5-set loss in the World Championship semis in 2018. So Poland being the best team in the world, number one team in the world at least, the betting favorite, the 2-time defending champions. And we talked about this on the show on Tuesday when we really previewed the whole tournament, but Poland is beatable. And we showed that Poland is beatable, we being the U.S., by destroying them, completely destroying them in the semifinals of Volleyball Nations League. Just an absolute 3-0 beatdown. Was never even close. It was really impressive. The service performance, ace to error ratio off the charts, excellent service reception, really didn't let Poland get anything going, and Micah Christensen completely outplayed the new Polish setter, who's Marcin Janusz, in case you haven't been watching club volleyball this year. So Poland's got a new setter. Poland also doesn't have the best player in the world. No Wilfredo Leon for this World Championships. He had a minor knee surgery after his club season, didn't play VNL. It was 50-50 if he'd be able to make it to World Championships. The doctors decided against it. So we will not see Wilfredo Leon. And however, of all the teams that can handle losing the best player in the world and still being just fine at the outside hitter spot, it is Poland. They have Kamil Semeniuk, who's one of the best players on the planet. I expect Alexander Śliwka to be the second left side, a kind of wily little lefty. And then Bartosz Kurek on the right, who has a nasty habit of dominating the United States in big matches, including 2018 World Championships. But Poland playing at home, probably the best home fans in the world of men's volleyball. Incredible volleyball culture there. Very tall order to beat them at home, especially in pool play, because that match, you can see it, is the last one of the entire pool, Poland versus the USA. So the two teams will have had a little bit of time to get to understand themselves through 2 matches before they take on one another, perhaps with the pool on the line. And Poland's issues late in tournaments these last couple years has been their team mentality in elimination matches, like this year VNL when they crumbled and lost to the U.S., last year Olympics, last year European Championships, like all the way back to 2018 Worlds, which they won. They've really been disappointing in major tournaments, and that just comes something about the pressure in the mental game late in tournaments. But in pools and at home, I don't see that being as much of a problem for Poland. So I think they're going to be much more difficult to beat this time than they were in VNL, even though their roster is going to be the same. And the U.S. is adding Matt Anderson from the team that beat them just about a month ago. I still wouldn't say I would pick the U.S. to win that match, but it is going to be one of the best matches of all of pool play in any pool. So you're going to want to put that one on your calendar for sure on Tuesday, August 30th. We'll get to the exact schedule in just a second. The other team in this pool that I really want to point out is Bulgaria. We need to not be sleeping on Bulgaria. This Bulgarian team is good. They are very underrated at 22nd in the world. They were just a couple points away from beating Brazil and qualifying for the Tokyo Olympics. They let that slip away, and then their roster isn't quite deep enough to bring all the starters all the time and keep their world ranking high. So they've really slipped in the world rankings the last couple years. This VNL, they weren't particularly good because they didn't have 2 of their probably best players. They didn't have Sveton Sokolov, who's easily a top 5 opposite in the world, if not maybe top 3. This guy is a monster, and he's coming back for this tournament. That changes everything for Bulgaria. Their weaknesses in VNL, when I saw them in person, I was in Ottawa the first week of Volleyball Nations League. Their weaknesses were they couldn't put enough service pressure on teams, and they were a little bit too weak in reception. So they lost the serve and pass battle against just about everyone they played, and you're just not going to win a lot of matches that way. But getting Sokolov back is a huge, huge weapon from the service line. And the other guy who they get back is an outside hitter named Todor Skrimov. A littler guy, but he's been around for a long time, really dynamic, crazy, like cross-court range, vicious from the service line, and passes the ball great. So those two guys coming back really helps to fix Bulgaria's 2 main weaknesses that I noticed in VNL. They've also got Alex Nikolov, who a lot of you American fans will know from the NCAA. NCAA Player of the Year, first to ever win that award as a freshman. He carried Long Beach State to the finals. He was their entire team this year. I saw him at VNL back in June in Ottawa that first week in person for the first time. Oh my goodness, you guys, I cannot tell you, I can't say enough. This is the best 18-year-old I have ever seen. Ever. It is crazy how good Alex Nikolov already is at age 18. And I expect him to start over Martin Atanasov at World Championships. And Atanasov is like a internationally renowned like veteran player, and Nikolov is just so ridiculously good. His arm is unbelievable, but his court sense, just the way that he moves and the way that he feels angles and his awareness and the stuff about being a volleyball player that you can't teach, he already has the elite levels at age 18. So we saw that a bit at Long Beach State, but now he's playing with the big boys where he belongs. And sure enough, some of you might not have heard the news that Nikolov will not go back to Long Beach State as a sophomore. He's going straight to Lube Civitanova, one of the best teams, club teams on the planet, and the reigning Italian champions. So he's taking the next step in his career. And you better believe he might have a little bit of fuel against the United States. Bulgaria, so you got Sokolov at opposite for Bulgaria, probably Skrimov and Nikolov on the left sides. They've got one really good middle named Alex Grozdanov, but past that, I think their setter, Georgi Saganov, is average. Their libero, Ivanov, is kind of a non-factor, and then their second middle, who knows who he might be. So Bulgaria is going to have some weaknesses at. They have a sort of smaller blocking setter who we can go after. They've got their second middle is going to be pretty weak, regardless of who the U.S.'s matchup is, and then their libero just is kind of there. He's not anything particularly special, but we're going to have to work hard to get Skrimov, Nikolov, and Sokolov off the service lines. This is a more dangerous serving Bulgarian team than it was at VNL when we beat them. I think that was 3-0. No, 3-1. Okay, I went back and got this history as well. U.S. Beat Bulgaria this year in VNL. Last year beat them at VNL. 2019 VNL, we actually lost to Bulgaria in 4. It's the last time Bulgaria's beaten us. We played them again at World Championships in 2018, beat them 3-0 in the second round, and beat them at VNL that year as well. So our history against Bulgaria is good, but I'm never confident playing against this team because I remember, I wonder what year it was, maybe 2015, 14 or 15 World League in Chicago where I live. I saw the U.S. play Bulgaria and lose in 5, and that American team was nasty, and Bulgaria wasn't overwhelmingly good, but Todor Skrimov and Sokolov, guys like that, showed up in the 5th set and beat us, and I was there. So I'm never going to sleep on Bulgaria. They're better than their 22nd ranking. I like the U.S. on paper in that match for sure. I think our out-of-system attacking is significantly better than theirs. I think we're way better down the middle. We're way better at the setter position. And even with a bolstered reception unit, I think we're going to be able to pass the ball better than Bulgaria. So I expect to win that match. But if you watch the show on Tuesday, I actually went out on a limb and picked Bulgaria to beat Poland. I said Bulgaria is going to beat Poland in 5. We'll see if that actually happens, but I could see it. This is just to make the point that Bulgaria is better than the 22nd ranked team in the world. That's the point I'm trying to make here. So let's go ahead and look at the exact schedule of the matches. It's getting underway tomorrow. U.S. taking on Mexico. The times here in the middle are local time for me, so Central Time because I'm here in Chicago. So tomorrow, Friday, August 26th, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. Same exact time on Sunday against Bulgaria, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific on Sunday the 28th against Bulgaria, and then kind of a featured game, that last game of pool play, at least for the U.S., 1:30 p.m. Central for me, so that's 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific on Tuesday, August 30th. And that's it for pool play. The format of this tournament this year is different than in years past. We went into that in detail on Tuesday's show, so go check that out. But in order to make it out of pools, you need to, if you finish top 2 in your pool, you're guaranteed to make it out. Some of the third place teams even will make it out of their pools as well. There's 6 pools of 4, and 4 of the third place finishing teams out of the 6 will make it to the round of 16. So it's possible to win only one match in one of the 3 matches in pools and advance. If you win 2, you're definitely going to get out, even if it's as a third place team in a tiebreaker. 2 wins should absolutely be the target for this American team at the very least. Gotta beat Mexico. That's non-negotiable. Absolutely have got to beat Mexico tomorrow. We've really got to beat Bulgaria the following day too. I think we're better in that matchup, even though Bulgaria is better than they were at VNL, because you can't take any chances against Poland in Poland. And especially if we already have 2 wins in hand by that point, we can go into that match against Poland feeling less pressure and just taking kind of the opportunity that's ahead of us to maybe come out and win the pool. So 2 wins is a great target for this American team. But the more, the better. The more standings points you can get, the better your set ratio is, the better of a seed that you will have as you get into the round of 16 and the rest of the tournament. So it's impossible to project that right now. It's not like, oh, the second place team in Pool C plays the third place team in Pool D. It's not like that where the bracket crossover matches are predetermined. After pool play is over, the 16 teams who made it are just seeded straight up 1 through 16 based on their record during pool play, win-loss, points, set ratio, etc., other than the hosts. So really, the better you do in pools, the better your seed and the better your matchup in the first round of the bracket. So every match really, really important. So I'm going to pause, go up to the chat a little bit, see if there's any questions. Better than Leon at 18. I'm assuming you're referring to Alex Nikolov. I didn't see Wilfredo Leon play in person at age 18. I did see Nikolov. Leon was way more physical than any 18-year-old in volleyball history, but the ball control and just kind of the movement and the understanding, I think Nikolov might have him at least at those 2 points in their careers. And that's really saying a lot. I don't know if Nikolov has best player on the planet potential, which Leon currently is, but this kid's going to be really, really good. He might be the best under 21 prospect in the world. So let's kind of wrap the show up with just some general takes about this American team. If you didn't watch the 9x9 episode we did right after Volleyball Nations League, where the USA finished 2nd, I want to reiterate something that I think is important. That performance at that tournament, finishing 2nd, losing a 5-setter to France in the finals, that was a great tournament performance for the United States men. I don't want to hear that we threw it away. I don't want to hear that we couldn't close, that we couldn't finish in the finals. There's nothing to be ashamed of about this summer's Volleyball Nations League. We didn't have Matt Anderson. We got just completely destroyed in the first 2 sets of those finals against France. Wasn't even close. We then switched up and did something that we had never done before. We put TJ DeFalco on the right side. We put DeFalco as like a true opposite, brought Magatutia in. He played great and brought it all the way back against the reigning Olympic champions to end up losing it in 5. Nothing to be ashamed of there. That was an incredibly good achievement and a great step in the right direction for the U.S. And it was such a huge contrast from the Olympics last summer. And we got to put this all in perspective, because this international volleyball calendar right about now is weird, because it's World Championship year. And being an even year, obviously, this tournament played every 4 years, the even years that aren't the Olympics. But we had the Olympics just last year. So at the same time as it being a World Championships year, it's also like the first year of a new quad, even though it's been shortened to 3 years. So this is a weird year, and there needed to be a lot of kind of reset buttons pressed in different areas after the way Tokyo went. I mean, we all watched it. We all saw one of the worst serving performances of all time. We saw just colossal pressure building on every American player, and in that last match against Argentina that we had to win to advance out of pools, that pressure was crushing. The body language was awful. The clutch ability to make plays in late game situations against Argentina, in that Russia match in pools, in the Brazil match in pools, it was bad. It was bad. We were not a world-class team. We did not look like a top 10 team in the world. We did not look like a team who could contend to get on the podium at any international tournament. That poor performance seemed to me to honestly spark some legitimate changes. And these aren't even necessarily personnel changes. The only major personnel change is a bad one. That's losing Taylor Sander, who was by far the best player for the U.S. at Tokyo last year. The style of play of this American team has seemed to be reset. It seems to me like John Speraw has done a good thing and has taken a serious look at his team's performance last summer, assessed the weaknesses, say that's not good enough. And I think that there was so much thinking and so much processing and so much analysis. I think it was kind of analysis paralysis, so to speak. And this year, at least watching the U.S. at VNL, it seems like a reset button has been pressed. It seems like they've gone back to basics a little bit. They've focused on some of the more fundamental things about playing international level volleyball, like covering blockers, like serving the right guy, like just the intelligence around serving instead of going back and beating the ball as hard as you can into the back wall every time. Isolating weak receivers and targeting them and mixing things up with float serves versus spin serves and, fundamental stuff for elite level volleyball teams. Serve receive looked way better at VNL, even with Russell and DeFalco, who occasionally struggle in that area. Eric Shoji's been awesome. We've been a very good defensive team earlier in VNL so far this summer. And then the one thing that the U.S. has always kind of hung its hat on, one of the flagship things of what's made us a great team over the years, is the transition game. All the way back to 2008 when we won that gold medal, that the transition focus from Hugh McCutcheon to Alan Knipe to now John Speraw has always been there. There's always been an emphasis on just touching a ball, keeping it alive off a block touch, off a dig, getting some kind of swing in transition and making the right choice, either terminating if you think you've got a great chance, recycling it into the block, or putting the other team just out of system somehow. In volleyball, it comes down to it. You've got to score points on serve, and you've got to do that in one of three ways. You've got to ace people, you've got to stuff block people, or you've got to get the ball in transition and score on offense. And the U.S. is good at all three of those things, but that focus on the transition game has always been huge for us, and I was impressed by that at VNL. I love the evolution in TJ DeFalco's out-of-system game. He's had a couple phenomenal club seasons. I really like the choices that he's making, both high hands, hammering sharp cross court, challenging weaker line blockers, off speed, a bunch of great options. And then the way that Aaron Russell has rebounded from a very serious injury to be back to the highest contact point of maybe any outside hitter in the world is amazing. And he's able to hit shots and hit deep corner 4 to 5 against 3 blockers that you just can't defend against. And that's the sort of thing that makes the U.S. great in transition. And then, we get Matt Anderson back. So now we have that opposite presence that you can legitimately throw high balls to and that we were kind of missing during VNL. And Kyle Ensing had a good tournament, but out of system, he's just not going to overpower anybody. So you get Anderson back and all of his experience and his incredibly versatile skill set. This team has podium potential. It really does. This American team has podium potential. It's going to come down to how we perform in pools. Got to win 2 matches. Huge bonus if we win 3 matches, get a great seed going into the bracket. But I can't think of a matchup anywhere else in the world that I wouldn't say the U.S. at least has a chance against. We've seen that we can beat Poland. Without Matt Anderson, we destroyed the same Polish team that we're about to see only a month ago. We can beat France. Not very many teams can say that, but I think that that's possible. We beat them in VNL in the preliminary round. We've narrowly lost in that final. France is unbelievable. They're so good at everything, but the United States doesn't really have any weaknesses, and I think they understand the game plan there. I don't know if I would pick it, but I think of the teams in this tournament, the U.S. stands among the best chances against the French. We can beat Italy for sure. I'm not afraid of them. We can beat Brazil. Brazil is hugely on the decline. We can beat even a team like Japan, who is a really tricky matchup for a lot of teams. We can beat them because we can serve and pass at their same level, and we're significantly better in blocking and out-of-system attacking. There's there's not a lot of teams in this tournament that I think match up overwhelmingly well against the United States. And it's this mentality thing that's changed in a positive way for me, that these guys have left the horrible memories of Tokyo last year behind. They've gotten back to basics, both game style wise and mentally a little bit this year. And they're coming off of VNL where, undermanned, they had a hugely positive performance, finishing in second place. So this American team is a threat. This American team is a threat in this World Championships. It's going to be a grind. This is an extremely difficult tournament to win. You get into the round of 16, which I expect us to do, and one bad match and you're out in like 12th place. So it's no guarantee. This is one of the hardest tournaments in the world to win. But the opportunity here, I think, is kind of the difference in mindset versus last year. Last year it felt to me, and I have no technical connection with USA Volleyball. I don't talk to very many of the guys, but last year to me it felt like pressure. This year to me it feels like opportunity. Think about it. If you really know the rest of the field right now, without Russia in the field, who might be the one national team in the world who I think the U.S. does not match up well against, without Russia in the field, without Poland having Wilfredo Leon, without Brazil being usual Brazil, they're steeply in decline. Italy doesn't have Ivan Zaitsev. They're in a bit of an identity crisis right now. Iran isn't much of a championship factor anymore. Netherlands is a one-man show. France is my favorite for this tournament, but it's the only team that I would pick over 50% against the United States in a medal match. I really would. I have cautiously optimistic feelings about this American team for this World Championships tournament, and it's a quick one. It's only 2 weeks. We could be talking in just about 2 weeks. Sunday, September 11th, are the medal matches. We'll be here on YouTube, me and Everett, wrapping it all up. There's a very good chance the U.S. walks away with the medal, and I'm hoping that it's a slightly better color than the last one we earned, which was bronze in 2018. It's weird. It's weird for me to be this excited about a USA team after what happened in Tokyo just a year ago. But this VNL, the way that this team has performed, and just not even the on-court, but just the feeling around it has really swung me towards being optimistic about this American team for World Championships. All right, going to scan the chat a little bit here. USA roster, we already went over it earlier in the show. They've got 16 guys in Europe. They'll cut that down to 14 by tomorrow. Getting Anderson back, and I'm excited for a potential 3 outside hitter situation. I think that's a pretty good point. It's worth talking about, and we'll see how this is really put into play in the tournament. How do we use the versatility of all 3 of our wings? Matt Anderson obviously spent the bulk of his career playing outside hitter. He can clearly hit right side, left side, or pipe. I honestly would argue that Anderson hitting in the pipe is the best attack area in his game. And now that we know that TJ DeFalco can slide over to the right side and occasionally bang some balls front and back row, maybe we use that. Maybe they pick and choose some rotations to bring Anderson into the passing pattern, leave DeFalco to hit D balls on the right side, maybe even move Aaron Russell around. There's a lot of really good options for this American team with the versatility we have of the 3 wings. And we're going to be an outstanding rotation 1 team as well, with Anderson on the left, and I assume DeFalco will be the L1 outside hitter next to the setter, and we'll get to hit on the right in that one rotation. So a lot to look forward to there. I'm really curious to see if we see that tomorrow versus Mexico. I don't know if Mexico is going to be a good enough serving team to force us into being creative in those reception patterns, but it's definitely worth following along with. How do we use those 3 wings? Do we use them interchangeably? Eric showed you had a video of them practicing with TJ opposite and Matt passing. That's what I mean. It's not... Matt Anderson will line up as the opposite. He'll line up opposite the setter, and DeFalco will probably line up directly next to the setter. But in certain rotations, they might choose to move that around a little bit. So it's nice. Yeah, you're right. Now that they've practiced that, they have really a lot of good options with now 4 outstanding receivers on the court at all times. Isaac, the USA needs Jiri Kovar to become a citizen so he can carry the team to a title. That's the last thing I could even imagine is Jiri Kovar in a USA jersey. Put in the chat, everyone, what goofy, memeable international player would you most like to see play for the USA? Could be a fun exercise. So we'll chat about that and more in the Volleyball Source Discord. You are definitely going to want to join the Volleyball Source Discord. The link is in the description. That will be, it already is, the best online community for volleyball in the world. We're going to be just popping off the whole World Championships tournament, watching all the matches. A couple other really important things. These matches, to my knowledge, will not be televised anywhere in the States on any TV networks. As far as I know, the only place to watch these is on volleyballworld.tv. That's the FIVB's official streaming platform. That same place you watched all of VNL. That is the place to watch World Championships. So Volleyball World TV, you can pay for a subscription for just this tournament, and it probably won't cost you that much. So I really recommend doing that to watch all the matches. As far as I know, that's the only place you're going to be able to find them. And then last but not least, follow along with everything related to Volleyball Source for this tournament. We're going to be here live on YouTube so many times throughout, in the middle of pools, after pools, in between brackets several times, and then at the end of the tournament after the medals are given out. We're going to be super active on this YouTube channel, on volleyballsource.ca with some written content, and then on Instagram. My Instagram at rstclair1 that you see on the screen. I'm going to be very, very active, and then that same sort of stuff is going to show up on the Volleyball Source Instagram at Volleyball Source. So I think that's about it. Get in the Discord. We'll see you all there. And the next show we're going to do is going to be Sunday night after the first 3 days of pool play. So that's after 2 USA matches. Is Sunday night will be our next show. We will see everyone in the Discord. Enjoy USA versus Mexico tomorrow morning, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific on Volleyball World TV. USA in the World Championships, man. What more could you ask for? I'm excited for it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on Sunday night.